Hi there, quilt peeps. This is Tish from Cotton Candy Quilts in lovely scenic Gaston, Indiana, and I am here today with Harmony Block 4. This is called Chorus, and you'll see that we've done a lot of the same things we've done before. We've done those 4 patches, and we're also doing geese, but this one has a little special challenge. We have directional sky on one of the geese. So a lot of this is going to be review, and if you get confused, you can go back to block 1 and do it again, look at that again. But this has to be done a special way. So toward the end of the video, I am going to go through this step by step so that you get this directional print going in the correct direction. It's really not hard once you know the trick. And I'm going to give you some tips on doing traditional geese, because if you do them the traditional way, sometimes they're just a little strange. But we're going to be making ours a little bit bigger so that you can trim them down with the wing clipper. And I'm going to give you really great information, a little bit of magic to make sure you get those geese right. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started on this. Okay, so here we are getting ready to have all of our pieces cut, getting ready to do block 4, which is chorus. And here you see our strips cut for that strip piece 4 patch, which we've done several times now. If you're having problems with it, just check back on block 1 and it'll go through step by step. There's no directional on this. And then we have 2 different geese. You can see up there in the corner, the purple pop with the aqua flying, or the purple flying. Those are to make 4 geese at a time. So not so many pieces there. And then here, oh my gosh, we have rectangles. Do you know what that means? We're going to do a more traditional goose. However, we're going to cut it a little bit bigger, and we're still going to use our wing clipper to cut that down. The reason why we have to do this is there's no way to make those 4 of a kind geese and get the directions on this directional print to go the same way each time. We could do it if we had it for the goose itself, but for the sky, we absolutely need to do this step by step. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do those 4 patches. So let's do that, and then we'll do the 4 at a time geese, and then come right back here because I'm going to give you points and tips about doing traditional geese. It's going to change your world. So let's get started. Okay, my pretties, we are getting ready to do those blocks, those geese that have the directional striated as the sky. And there is a specific way that we need to do this. So the first thing I want you to do is to separate your striated blocks into 2 separate piles. So that's easy enough right now, right? And then put those stripes vertical. This is really important to put them vertical. And then we're going to take the whole stack and we're going to turn them upside down on each side and keep each of the stacks, like keep your right on your right and your left on your left. This is really important. And then the next thing we're going to do is draw lines. So if you noticed in Nancy's book down on the bottom of the page, she has the stripes going vertical on the bottom row, showing you how to draw lines to make it come out horizontal. I know it sounds weird, but it really does work. So we're going to, this is your goose fabric, and I'm going to move it out of the way for right now, and then I'm going to take the right hand stack and I'm going to move it to the right and just get it out of the way. So that leaves all of these little boogers that are going on the left hand side of the goose. So now I have the stack that's on the right hand or on the left hand side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line from the bottom left to the top right, and I'm going to do that on every single one of these blocks. And if you are following along, if you bought your pattern and block of the month from Cotton Candy, you know that I sent you bigger measurements for these blocks than she has, because we're still going to use the wing clipper to cut them down. Just because we're doing this the traditional way does not mean that we have to get dead on. We can cut them a little bit bigger and then trim them down afterwards and end up with perfect blocks. So there's a line, hopefully dark enough, yeah, it appears so, that goes from the bottom left to the top right. This is from the stack that goes on the right hand side, and I am going to draw a line from the, it kind of makes a house, it looks like the goose itself. I'm going to draw a line from the top left to the bottom right. All right, see how that kind of looks like the finished goose? It does, doesn't it? So we're going to do that with each stack so that we have them all done just like this. So let me mark those and I'll be right back. All right, I have all of my lines drawn on all of my pieces, and I wanted to show you a couple of things. First of all, it seems like we could just turn this and do this all the same way, right? But these pieces are really not interchangeable, because if I take this line on the right hand side and move it to line up with the line on the left hand side, oh my gosh, look at that. Now the lines in the fabric are horizontal instead of vertical. That will not work if you want them all oriented the same way. The other thing that I'm going to show you is, if you look up here, I have just a little bit, a tiny hair of selvage in this, and I really don't want selvage in my pieces because it shrinks differently and it'll pull. But I miscut it and I don't want to cut it again. So I am going to make sure that that goes up at the top of my block, because when I cut, I'm going to cut away that and none of that selvage will be in my block. I'm going to do all of the right sides first. The only reason I do the right sides first is I'm right-handed. You can do the left-hand side first. It does not matter. And instead of doing a 1/4 inch, we're going to sew on the line, but not dead on the line. This line goes from 1/4 to 1/4, but we need to leave the space for the fabric to fold back. And when I get done sewing, I want to show you what kind of a difference it makes if you just leave a little bit extra, and how to get your blocks not to be so wonky. I don't know about you, but when I used to do traditional blocks like this, sometimes my geese just didn't fly right. They went funny. Like this would be down like this, and I'm going to show you why that happens and how we are compensating for that by what we're doing by just sliding over to the left just a little bit. And if you notice, all of my edges are exactly lined up on this block. This is going to help me get a really, really good squared up block when I'm done. But it's not the only thing. So I'm going to show you how this makes a difference right here. So let me go sew these and then I'll be right back. So though I prefer the no waste geese method where we make 4 at a time, sometimes you just have to do things differently because of the pattern that you're using. So it's always a great idea to have lots of different techniques in your wheelhouse so that you can do what is best for that block. So let me make a seam here and I will be right back. Okay, so here is one of my geese with the right side done. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but I am next to touching the dark line that I drew, but I'm not exactly on top of it because the fold in the fabric takes up space. So before I cut, and after I cut, you know, there's no going back. I would have to cut more pieces if it didn't work right. I want to check to make sure this is absolutely correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this piece back into its proper position. So it'd be just like taking the iron to it. And I want you to look up here. Do you see that that piece fits exactly into the space and evens up with the rest of the fabric that's on the back? This is the rest of your square right here. So when I go like this, you can tell that it perfectly fits in that spot. Look at that. That's how you know you're going to get a good goose. Because if you have it, sometimes like, let me just do something here. Sometimes it'll fold up like that, right? And your goose is like out of whack. So when you fold on the stitching line, it should fit up into that space completely. Now, my fabric is a little wrinkly up there because it must have been on a fold, but you can tell when I hold my finger down that it completely covers that space. Now that I'm sure that it's correct, I am going to trim at 1/4 of an inch away. So let me take my ruler and put the 1/4 inch right on the seam line and then cut that off. And that little triangle is what we don't have when we do no waste geese. So you've probably noticed if you're going along with me and doing the no waste geese with the wing clipper ruler that you don't have so much waste and you're not using so much of the fabric, which is going to give you extra at the end to do companion projects to go with it, or put the extra in something else, or make a pillowcase, which is a really great idea because then you have pieces of fabric, if anything would happen to the quilt, that you could take out of the pillowcase and use to repair the quilt. So some people take and they just sew and then they have a bunch of half square triangles. I'm not that thrifty, so I'm going to throw mine away. Don't yell at me. And then I'm going to press all of these up. So let me trim and press, and as you notice, the lines are going horizontally, and all of the lines are going horizontally because we've all sewed them so that they're on the vertical, which means when I turn them, they're horizontal. So let me get this side done and then we'll go on to the next. All right, I have them all trimmed and pressed, as you can see, and the blocks are going horizontal just like they should be. Here's the left hand side, and if you notice, the blocks are still horizontal, and the line goes from the bottom left to the top right, so it's going to go right across the other one, right? Because you need 1/4 inch there, so you have to sew across, and that's going to give us horizontal blocks on each side. And I wanted to show you, isn't this nice and straight? Isn't that perfect? So if you start making sure that it fits in the space that you have, then you will have much straighter geese if you're using the traditional method. So that's a little tip I'm going to give you. So I'm going to finish these geese and then we're just going to move right on. Okay, we're getting ready to trim. Oops, sorry about that wiggle. And I think you can see that there's a little more around the edge than you're used to if you've been using this tool all along. That's because the math was easier this way and I didn't want to give you weird numbers to have to cut. So we're still going to trim this down to 3.5 by 2 just like we did the others. So let's get these all trimmed down, and then I have one more tip to show you this time before we finish. Okay, we've got all those geese made. Yay! And now we're going to put them together. And you actually have to join a green goose to a purple goose before you can put the whole block together. So my trick that I want to tell you is take the green goose, which is going to be to the outside of the block, no matter which orientation it's in, and flip it over the purple goose. And then you're going to sew from the green goose side. So when you sew your 1/4 of an inch, you can see where those two seams cross right there on the corner, right there. And you're going to sew with this up so that you don't miss your point. Now the important point is go a thread or two toward the seam, toward the edge of your fabric, instead of right at the point, and the fold in the cloth when you press it will still give you a nice sharp point. So let's put these together and we'll just finish up this block.